Hello, everyone, and welcome to Gorilla Whale, a Godzilla watch-along podcast. I am your kaiju consultant, Kevin Carpenter.
And I am the European tourist hiking in jeans in the national park, Kayla Knutson.
That sounds uncomfortable.
It happened. I've seen him. I've seen them. I'm concerned every time that they're going to pass out of heat stroke.
I once made the mistake of hiking in a black leather jacket. I was so proud of that leather jacket. I was so proud of the leather jacket. I didn't think about it. I was just like, man, I can't wait to show off my cool new leather jacket on this hike. Guess what happened? It was really hot.
Yeah. What is wrong with you?
I really wanted to show off the leather jacket.
Weren't you a Boy Scout?
I was a Girl Scout, actually. By the way, I'm not trans.
What?
My mom... Real quick, my mom headed the local Girl Scout troop, but while I was in kindergarten, I didn't have anyone to look after me after school, so my mom just signed me up for her Girl Scout troop.
I see.
Even though I am a boy, and so I'm somewhere in some registry, I am listed as a Girl Scout. I guess I don't know. Anyway,
I was a Girl Scout. Well, that makes a lot of sense because the Girl Scouts was founded because girls were, the Boy Scouts was a thing, and girls were like, we would like to be scouts, and the Boy Scouts were like, no, you can't be scouts. This is the Boy Scouts for boys. And the Girl Scouts were like, okay, well, we'll go start our own thing, which is the Girl Scouts. But even though it is called, I think they're still officially called the Girl Scouts, they have always been the spirit of it, at least, and I think in the bylaws or whatever, I don't think there was anything against a guy signing up. If a guy wanted to sign up for the Girl Scouts, they'd be like, of course, because the whole point of the Girl Scouts was that they wouldn't let us join, so we made our own thing.
Yeah, I'm living evidence of that.
Yeah, so you had to be a Girl Scout by default of not having a babysitter.
Yeah, pretty much. I also got access to the cookies, which was a great perk.
Oh, yeah.
So, speaking of something sweet, let's talk about Godzilla Raids Again.
Yes.
Which was such a fun movie. So, before I launch into the historical context, Kayla, is there anything you want to pipe up with, or do you want me to dive right in?
We'll get to it.
We'll get to it?
Yeah, we'll get to it.
All right, let's not break the format too much. Okay, so, Godzilla Raids Again. Historical context. Hack. It's 1955. The success of the original Godzilla has shaken Japan. While it received mixed reviews, the movie set the record for the highest first-day ticket sales in Tokyo and went on to sell millions of tickets. Toho had a hit, and that meant that they needed a sequel right now. Two problems. The director, Ishiro Honda, was busy with the romance film Love Tide. Also, Godzilla had turned into bones in the previous movie, but that wouldn't stop Toho. Toho hires Motoyoshi Oda to direct the sequel. As for their prize kaiju, here's Toho's solution. Let's have another Godzilla show up that we'll also call Godzilla, but it won't be the original Godzilla, but we'll still call the movie Godzilla Raids Again. Yeah, that makes sense. And so, 1 year after the original Godzilla, Godzilla Raids Again releases in Japan. In America, however, Warner Brothers changes the title to Gigantus the Fire Monster, so audiences won't be confused by this new Godzilla that isn't Godzilla. But what's there to be confused about, I say?
I mean, for once, the American studio... Well, not for once, but for the first time, the American distributors are making a good decision with regards to a Godzilla movie, and it only took them to the second movie.
It does make this movie a weird one for Godzilla historians, though, especially on the American side of things.
Yeah. Also, as a note to the audience, to be clear, like the original Godzilla, there is an American dub and re-edit of this one. We didn't watch that. At least I didn't. I watched the original sub-Japanese one.
Yes, we do request...
Kevin, I assume you also...
Yes, we do request for the rest of these
one.
movies.
Okay, good.
God damn it. We do request that if you're doing these movie watch-alongs with us, that you watch the original Japanese with subtitles, unless said otherwise.
Yeah.
The second episode where we watched the American re-edit of the original Godzilla was a special case. And of course, once we get to the MonsterVerse movies and Godzilla 1998, of course, watch those in the original English. Unless you're feeling spicy and want to watch those in a Japanese dub with English subtitles. Just note that won't be the experience we're doing.
Like the original, this one has a re-edit, but we will not be going over that movie. I actually didn't look too much into it to see. I just started it and then I realized, oh, this is in English. This isn't correct. And then I had to go find the original Japanese version. So I don't know if it got changed up on the plot that much or whatever. I know it has a different opening because I saw the opening. But yeah, we were only particularly interested in viewing the American re-edit of the original Godzilla. I guess if that's something you guys are dying for, you can let us know and then we can look into doing that, but we didn't feel it was like very necessary, I guess. We have a lot of movies to get through.
If you want us to do a bonus episode on Gigantus the Fire Monster, let us know on our Ko-fi page or in the comments of this episode.
Yes, you may request bonus episodes, but we will not be adding additional homework unless you guys like really, really want it, because we also have other plans for bonus episodes. If that's what you want, though, I'll watch it.
And by the way, if there's any other giant monster movies that you guys want us to watch as like bonus episodes or even as part of the podcast, just let us know, honestly. We'd love to hear about more giant monster movies. And I believe we're already planning on doing bonus episodes for like Pacific Rim and Nope and Cloverfield down the line.
Yeah, for sure.
Not immediately, but down the line.
Yeah. We are for sure. We're doing them in roughly chronological viewing order with regards to when they came out. So this part of the podcast, the early part of the podcast, is older movies, and then as the podcast goes on, we'll get to newer movies. But yeah, if there's any monster movies out there that you guys want in the bonus episodes, let us know. And if we aren't already planning on doing one, we'll take it into consideration.
And while we're on the subject, real quick, if you want to hear our bonus episode where we watch the original King Kong in anticipation of our next movie, Godzilla vs. King Kong, be sure to check out our Ko-fi page. By the way, you don't have to watch the original King Kong in order to understand Godzilla vs. King Kong, but it is nice.
Also, when we say Godzilla versus King Kong, we do not mean the recent Godzilla versus Kong or Godzilla X Kong. This is a 1950s Godzilla versus King Kong, like the first one they did. The Hollywood has been doing this shit. People complain about the state of Hollywood now and the endless prequels and sequels and crossovers and franchises, but this has been happening since time began.
Oh yeah, no, I'm so excited for the Godzilla versus King Kong episode that we're doing next, because there's a lot going on in that movie. But
oh boy.
we
can't
get ahead
back to
of
this
ourselves.
one.
Godzilla
Give them
raids
the plot
again.
summary.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So, Godzilla raids again. Pilot Koji Kobayashi has engine troubles while in the air and ends up stranded on a deserted island. Another pilot, Shoichi Tsukioka, flies down to rescue him. But when both pilots attempt to leave, they are suddenly witness to two giant creatures fighting each other, an ankylosaurus known as Anguirus, and a Godzilla, who is not the original Godzilla, can't stress this enough. The news is horrifying, especially without the oxygen destroyer that saved the day in the previous film. Returning character Dr. Yamane, who looks absolutely depressed that his warning about another Godzilla took less than a year to come true, advises the government to use blackouts and flares to deter Godzilla in case of another attack. I mean, what else are they supposed to do? They already tried to build a giant electric fence. Sure enough, Godzilla attacks the shores of Osaka, interrupting a party that Tsukioka and his fiancée, the fishing company heiress Hidemi, were attending. The city goes blackout, people are evacuated, and the flares seem to distract Godzilla. But as a group of prisoners break free from their transport, they end up in a weirdly slow car chase before crashing and causing a fire. The fire lures Godzilla and Anguirus to the shore. Kobayashi and Tsukioka can only watch as the two kaiju fight, while the Japanese self-defense forces get demolished in their wake. Eventually, Godzilla rips out Anguirus' throat and burns his body with his atomic breath before leaving Osaka victorious. Quick note, Anguirus will return in future films.
Of fucking course he will.
No, he got better.
Continue.
In the aftermath, Hidemi's dad's fishing company moves to Hokkaido because Osaka got messed up. Tsukioka reunites with his pilot war buddy Tajima at a company dinner. Kobayashi hints to Hidemi that there's a girl that he likes, and Hidemi sneaks a peek at his diary and finds out that it's her. For some reason, wanting your best friend's girl needed to happen again in a Godzilla movie. But we can't focus on another one.
They weren't best friends in the... They weren't, but what's-his-face and the scientist guy were not best friends. And I actually am not... It's unclear. I can't remember how they met.
I might be getting that
It doesn't
confused
matter.
with
It doesn't
Raymond
matter.
Burr being
Love triangles-
university buddies with the professor.
The point is that love triangles are apparently a thing in these movies.
Gotta have a love triangle that is not set up as well as the previous love triangle.
It was weird because it was set up early, but not... Okay, continue.
But we can't focus on another love triangle. Godzilla has been spotted, this time on another deserted island. Kobayashi, Tsukioka, Tajima, and the rest of the Japanese defense forces head off to drop bombs on Godzilla. But during the run, Kobayashi gets shot out of the sky by Godzilla's atomic breath. His plane crashes into the icy mountain, causing a small avalanche. The rest of the pilots get an idea from his death. The defense forces regroup. They create a wall of fire to trap Godzilla in, and then fire missiles at the mountains, triggering a greater avalanche that buries Godzilla in ice. In the final moments, Tsukioka speaks a prayer to his departed friend that Godzilla has finally been defeated once and for all. Once and for all.
And then they never made another Godzilla movie.
So, Kayla, thoughts?
Okay, first off, this is actually the shortest amount of notes that I have so far on any of the movies. Yeah.
Is it because it's basically the same movie but watered down?
Yeah, it's like the same movie, but they took a good movie and then they made a bad movie. Tonally, it was completely different. There was so much laughter. I did make a note. There's so much laughter in this movie. There were so many, like, the tone of it was just completely different. There was a lot of, like, humor, but it felt out of place, basically, because it was still, like, it's Godzilla, and Godzilla was being taken seriously, but also it did not have any of, like, the heavy emotional weight that the original Godzilla had, in my opinion. The love triangle situation was just not anywhere near as good as the original love triangle situation. Having, like, the plot twist of that being a thing was like, okay.
Yeah.
It was funny because, like, they really immediately introduced a couple, like, right off the bat. They're like, here is Hitobe, and she's engaged to the pilot, like, instantly. I was like, oh, okay. And there's always a thing in these movies. They're never married, they're engaged. And I guess they're engaged. There's an engagement so that there could be a love triangle, so that the unrequited corner of this love triangle can die in a heroic sacrifice fighting Godzilla.
But it's not even that heroic of a sacrifice. I like,
he just kind of died.
Yeah, he just kind of dies. Like, he dive bombs Godzilla for I don't know why. Like, he dips his plane toward Godzilla.
Because plot is the entire thing of this movie. It was...
The other thing, though, with the original movie's love triangle, Serizawa and Emiko are engaged, and then Emiko wants to get with someone she is not engaged with. But in Godzilla Raids Again, the engaged couple are very clearly, like, in love with each other. And then there's this one guy kind of, like, coyly butting in. Just like, oh, there's this girl I like. I'll have to tell you later. Ha, 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 ha. And it's like, dude, what is the plan there? Like, literally, like, are you planning on telling your best friend's fiance that you're in love with her? Like, is that your plan?
Yeah, because she doesn't like you.
Yeah.
It is a very strange, they're probably were thinking, well, it's got to be a little bit different from the first one. But it lacks the emotional tension of Serizawa and Emiko were probably engaged. We don't get, like, too much on why they were engaged or any of that backstory, but we can kind of assume they were probably engaged because it was something of, like, an arranged marriage situation. I mean, her dad and him are, like, colleagues, so this isn't, unheard of. Yeah, this is a younger guy that I work with who would make a good husband, I think, and you guys will get engaged, We don't, like I said, we don't get too much backstory on their whole thing, but we can infer it's something like that because she clearly likes the other guy and wants to be with him.
Yeah.
And we see her spend a lot more time with him than we do with Serizawa. So it's like he's kind of estranged or distant. You know, they're engaged, but they're not like together. So it's not, we don't get the impression of like they were engaged and then she fell in love with somebody else and is like emotionally cheating on him. It does seem very much like kind of a, for lack of a better term, like a political engagement.
Yeah. There was a line where it's like Serizawa and Emiko were like childhood friends or something like that. So Emiko more sees Serizawa as like a brother. But I could definitely see that being like an arranged marriage. And then she, you know, had feelings for Ogata. While Serizawa feels more married to his work. Like, we don't really see Serizawa, like, going out to visit Emiko, except for when he, like, waves her off when she's on the boat. Like, we get that one shot of him wearing sunglasses over his eye patch, which I still love.
So good. Yeah, we do get the impression that he cares for her in the sense that they have known each other for a very long time and were childhood friends, and so he does care for her. Like, he agreed to marry her, but yeah, it's not like there's no passion in it. And you could argue that maybe it was kind of unrequited, but he realized like he was smart enough to realize that she didn't love him, so he just kind of kept a lid on it, because he does reveal at one point that he knows that she's in love with what's his face and wants them to be like happy and together. But yeah, there was so much more emotional conflict and tension in the original love triangle, and this one really is just like, and this guy is in love with you, and it's like, oh, okay, that's nice. Like,
it really makes Kobayashi's death feel more convenient than anything. Like, imagine like Kobayashi leaves his diary, and then Hidemi finds the photo of like, oh, I'm the girl that he likes. And then Kobayashi immediately dies. So can you imagine like Hidemi having the photo and then like her fiance comes back. It's like, oh no, my best friend died heroically. And Hidemi's just like, yeah.
Do you think she told him?
No.
Or did she just took that one to her grave?
She took that to her grave. She keeps the photo, but she definitely took that to her grave. She burns the diary.
Because, I mean, if I had to guess, I would bet that what happened was they were building this very quickly so that they could get out a sequel really fast. And they're like, okay, so somebody needs to die, but not like the main hero, because the main hero never dies. So we'll have this guy die, but it's like, well, why do we care? Like, oh, he's in love with the girl, so then we'll care that he dies. And it's like, no, we won't. Because there's no, like I said, this movie is tonally just so different from the plot of Godzilla Raids Again. Steals so much from the original Godzilla, but it has none of the emotional depth of the original Godzilla. And it does feel so rushed. It is like fascinating. I will say, you know, gotta give it to him for putting the monsters on screen very quickly. I do have a question for you, Kevin. Why the fuck wasn't Godzilla using his atomic breath at any point before halfway through the movie when he used it to burn the carcass of his already defeated enemy? Like, why did he rip out the Ankylosaurus's throat? Why didn't he just get him with atomic breath right away?
Here's my fan theory.
Okay.
I don't think Godzilla thought Anguirus was worth it. Because here's the thing about Anguirus.
Is there a cost to the atomic breath? Because at no point in time is it ever established that there's any sort of power cost for this.
This is a pride thing. So here's the deal.
So it's for plot.
Yeah, Anguirus comes back. But Anguirus, after this movie, when he comes back, he's more of like a sidekick character than anything. He just like, he kind of hangs out. But as far as I know, we don't get another movie where it's like Godzilla treats Anguirus as like a real rival, except for maybe Godzilla Final Wars, where Godzilla's just fighting everybody. But like, for the most part, Anguirus is like Godzilla's buddy after this. But like this movie, Godzilla Raids Again, my fan theory is that Godzilla doesn't really see Anguirus as that much of a threat. He saves the atomic breath for like, okay, all right, this fight is, you know, getting long. Let's finish this. But with Anguirus, he's down to tussle.
That's not the finishing move. He tears his throat out, The Ankylosaurus dies, and then Godzilla burns the body with the atomic breath. And then he starts using it all over the place.
Yeah.
It felt like the filmmakers forgot about the atomic breath and then remembered, oh yeah, we gotta do the atomic breath, which they don't do the cool scales light up thing in this one like they did in the original. So this Godzilla, it's a separate Godzilla, and this one doesn't glow. But yeah, he doesn't use his atomic breath until halfway through the movie when they remember it, and then he starts using it a whole bunch. And I'm just like, I'm so mad. I understand why this happened because it was shoddily made and rushed, but it makes me upset still.
Yeah, I mean, the Watsonian explanation is that Godzilla doesn't respect Anguirus. The Doyleist explanation is that special effects costed a whole lot back in 1955.
And I mean, they could have done, the thing is though, I feel like they could have done something where and listen, the atomic breath special effect though, I'm going to take a stab in the dark here and say that this version of the atomic breath special effect is actually not that expensive because it's just kind of like a fog machine coming out of Godzilla's mouth. They probably had like a tube hooked up to a fog machine, and then they kind of they stood behind the costume and had the tube sort of like, they was in profile and the tube is right there by his mouth, and then he opens it and then the fog comes out, And they do have multiple atomic breath shots. Like, it's not like there's only one, there's several. So it's like they could have done that early and established that Ankylosaurus is immune to the atomic breath. And then, like, that's why Godzilla can't use the atomic breath, because it just, Anguirus is also a atomic monster. Like Godzilla, this is something that is discussed in the movie, and thus he is immune to the radiation of the atomic breath.
That is something I also want to talk about.
It's a very simple fix, and they didn't even, think to do that. And I know, listen, here's the thing. It is a lot easier to look at a finished movie, and hindsight is, 20/20 or whatever, rather than when you're in the thick of it, but, come on.
Yeah. No, it's very clearly they were, trying to get this movie out in less than a year, because it's
they
shit,
didn't care.
Godzilla's a hit.
They didn't care about anything other than making money with this one, and that's why it pisses me off.
Let's talk about Anguirus a little bit more, actually, because I love that, Anguirus is just an Ankylosaurus, but big. Except, they also say, oh yeah, this Ankylosaurus is extremely carnivorous. For those of you who didn't have a dinosaur phase when you were 4 or 5, Ankylosauruses are herbivores. They are not carnivorous.
It is also hilarious because they whip out a dinosaur book to give you an info dump on the Ankylosaurus. And I literally wrote in my notes, I was like, this feels like you asked an 8-year-old about their favorite dinosaur. And so you got the info dump, except that not only is it wrong, it's not that it's wrong because, it's a giant Ankylosaurus, we're buying into giant monsters in this movie, suspension of belief. But it's like you said, it's wrong because Ankylosauruses were never carnivores. They're herbivores.
Yeah.
But they're like, okay, no, it's going to be the same thing except it's big and also it's a carnivore.
I mean, I also don't know how far along we were in the study of dinosaurs in the 50s.
Yeah, I mean, maybe they didn't know, but I think one of the things too is we know they theorize, basically, the scientists theorize,
including
that
Dr. Yamane, returning character Dr. Yamane. I'm so glad he came back.
He got his check. I respect that.
He's so sad.
You can see the despair in the actor's eyes at the script. The first one was so good. He had such a good meaty role, and then this one is schlock, so I get it.
Oh, I fully believe he was playing up that despair, because he was the character who in the previous movie looked in the camera and said, hey, if we don't solve this atomic, warfare problem, we're going to have another Godzilla. And then a year later, there's another Godzilla. He's like, God damn it, I was right.
Yeah, there's no time jump or anything in the movies. It basically takes place at the same, just like the movies released are 1 year apart. It's the same deal. So the scientists theorize that Anguirus is an old rival of Godzilla that has also returned via atomic resurrection because of the H-bombs and is now fighting Godzilla again, which they could have made Ankylosaurus a herbivore still, and it's just, Godzilla is a carnivore and he preys on... here's the thing about megafauna is that they need a lot of food. So theoretically, Godzilla needs a lot of food. And we establish in the previous film that when fishing gets bad, the villagers on these little islands on the outskirts of Japan that have the Godzilla myth, they get concerned because they're like, oh shit, Godzilla's gonna get hungry because there's not enough food in the ocean and he's gonna come for the people. Like, this is a pre-established thing. Godzilla is a carnivore. Does Godzilla eat anybody on screen in that movie? No. Am I bothered by it? Only a little bit still.
You want to see Godzilla eat folks so bad.
Yes! He should be eating people instead of just destroying everything. The predators don't just wreck stuff just to wreck. I get that he's a metaphor, but he's still an animal. And here is a giant, like, calorie cow, essentially, for Godzilla. He should be trying to eat Anguirus, and Anguirus could still be an herbivore that is defending itself against the predation of Godzilla. That's why it had all of the spikes to begin with, so it could fight off T-Rexes. Like, that herbivores have horns and are aggressive because they have to be in order not to get eaten. Predators are less aggressive, actually, than an herbivore because they don't want to get into a fight that's going to potentially prevent them from being able to hunt for their food. They have to spend so much energy hunting that anytime that they're not hunting, they're being lazy. That's why they only get upset or, like, aggressive when, one, they're hunting, or B, they're protecting their territory from a threat to, guess what, their food source. Like...
Do you know that you went from 1 to B there?
Yeah, it's fine. I was very close to pursuing, like, a zoology pathway in life, basically.
Oh.
Yeah. So... yeah, I think that if you're going to treat Godzilla and these giant monsters as giant, like, I would like just the thinnest strand of science in my science fiction. Generally, I'm okay, like, with everything else. But yeah, I kind of wish that they would act like animals. I mean, because they'll theorize, oh, it's about food source, and then it's like, it doesn't matter. Like, so I don't know why Anguirus had to be a carnivore except to make it, like, scarier or something.
Yeah. And Anguirus also does not eat people, but I do love watching them fight.
Yeah, no monster is eating people in this movie. They're just there to fight each other.
I love watching Anguirus and Godzilla fight because, like, Godzilla in the original movie moves very slowly. Like, he is a giant creature. He has like thundering foot stomps. But as soon as he, like, attacks Anguirus, suddenly he's, like, squaring up. They're both scrabbling against each other. It's like it's incredible.
They fast forwarded the film.
Yeah.
There's no way they didn't fast forward the film. I was sitting here and I was like, oh yeah, they just sped up the film a little bit to make seem speedier. Maybe they were a little clumsy in the suit. I don't know. But it was in such a way that it was noticeable, like, that it was sped up.
Do you think they tried to shoot it like Pacific Rim, where it's like Godzilla threw, like, a very slow punch, but it just, like, it just didn't work, so they fast forwarded it instead?
No.
Okay.
I don't. Partially because they couldn't do anything like Pacific Rim because Pacific Rim didn't exist yet. So let me be pedantic on that fact if I'm already being pedantic all over this movie. Two, no, I think they were just trying to make it more exciting, so they sped it up. I think maybe they were just kind of clumsy and slow in the suits because they probably couldn't see very well.
More than likely.
So they were probably just like, just do the choreography, and God knows how much the choreography was actually, like, planned out and choreographed, and then we'll speed it up later or whatever. Yeah, it just turns into, like, a wrestling match, which is fun.
And it's also a prime sign of the trajectory that we're going down.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Which, I was like, oh, we're just immediately jumping into the campier version of Godzilla. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine. I guess I'm glad that we didn't put it off or anything. Now I'm prepared for everything until we get to Godzilla -1 to be camp, and I will be pleasantly surprised at anything that it isn't. This isn't to say that I dislike a campy sci-fi monster movie. I totally do. It is just also, I mean, a part of the whole reason that there's anything to talk about with this podcast is the tonal depth and range of Godzilla, because the first one is so serious, and then the second one is immediately not.
And then we get serious, and then we get campy, and then we get serious. And then there is a cycle of Godzilla. Godzilla contains fathoms. Godzilla contains multitudes, and it's phenomenal to watch.
And there's more than one Godzilla to contain all of these fathoms and multitudes, apparently. I would have done, if I was in 1954 Japan, looking at these box office numbers and thinking, how do we make more money? Honestly, I would have done a prequel because Godzilla's dead. So I would have been like, let's do a historical monster movie about Godzilla terrorizing these islands, 100 years ago or whatever, and the fraught drama of like the chosen young woman who has to be sacrificed to the monster as like an examination of how society eats its young and turns youth into the death throes of the monsters. And also, you don't have to do the atomic breath because Godzilla hasn't been irradiated yet. So you don't have to worry about that. And the whole thing the problem is, I guess, the whole thing would kind of be like a character drama with Godzilla being a background situation because there's no airplanes to like go pew, 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 pew at him.
And that's what people want out of a Godzilla movie is more of the human element.
I know. They don't want the character drama. We have to sacrifice this giant monster.
They'll keep trying. Sometimes they'll succeed.
Well, yeah, but they'll put it in half-assed. That's what...
There's something that's really strange about this movie, and that it's structured so weird. For one thing,
it is.
The character of Kobayashi, like, he's introduced immediately with the plane going down. But then later in the movie, after the initial Godzilla stuff, he has this moment where he's like flying over these fishing boats, and then he drops a little message to the fishing boats, and they're like, oh, he dropped us a message. And the message is like, something like hang in there or something like that. And it's like, oh, hey, what a cool guy. And it's like, this is such a great character moment. Why wasn't this like the beginning of the movie? Why wasn't this like his introductory character moment?
Yeah. I will say I was a little bit confused, and I don't know if this was the film's fault or my fault. I did not realize that the fiance wasn't Kobayashi. Or
were you confused because they kept calling him Mr. Groom?
Well, there was that. I mean, I did get confused about that later on, yes. It's like I was confused and then I sort of cleared it up, and then they started calling him Bridegroom as like some sort of nickname that he kind of doesn't explain or whatever as he's being coy, flirting with his best friend's fiance. But so he's like the first character that's introduced, right? And then it cuts to the girls talking like they're dispatchers or whatever for the pilots, and the conversation is immediately like the one girl talking to what's her face, Hideme, about like, oh, your fiance is like so wonderful and is like clearly a pilot and stuff. So I'm like, oh, Kobayashi is the fiance in question. No. And I was like, oh, like, that's why I cared when his plane went down. I was like, oh no, like, the couple, he's like, they're so happy and in love, and then his plane goes down, and, oh, he's not what, huh? I was like, oh, okay, so that's not so like I said, I don't know if that was just, like, me, like, not paying as much of attention as I should have and kind of mixing things up, or if the movie was being like a little clunky on all of that. But yeah, I was like, oh, okay, so he goes down and then he's rescued by the hero, who is the fiance, of course. I don't know. Also, is it like a weird, what's the word I want to use? Like, the hero can't be the one in trouble?
I don't think that's it. I think they literally were just trying to do like a love triangle situation, and they just didn't get it right. And part of that is the rush production, and part of it is like, well, we can't just do the same thing as the previous movie, without really realizing that it's like in the previous movie, the infidelity added to Serizawa's shit situation. Like, not only is he burning all of his research and sacrificing his life, but also his fiance is cheating on him.
Yeah.
And it's like, God, you can't help but feel bad for the guy. And him doing the like, hey, have a happy life together after his sacrifice just gives him like more nobility in his sacrifice. Well, this one, it comes out of nowhere, it doesn't really help anything, and it doesn't really make Kobayashi's not even sacrifice, really, because it doesn't seem like he does anything heroic when he crashes his plane in the mountain. It really just seems like he got a little too like confident, and then Godzilla shot him out of the sky.
Yeah, it was not anywhere near the weight of Serizawa's sacrifice. It was because it's like, why? I mean, it's wild. Kobayashi, in general, is just kind of a strange character here, because the film starts with Kobayashi having engine troubles, getting stranded on the island, and then Tsukioka, who we find out is the fiance in question, goes in to rescue him, gets him out of there, and then Tsukioka and his fiance, Hideme, like, they're totally in love or whatever. Kobayashi is, like, his friend. And then later we find out, oh, Kobayashi is in love with Hideme.
I think it's Hideme.
And then they go to fight Godzilla, and Kobayashi crashes into a mountain and dies. And then that gives Tsukioka, oh, wait a minute. If we can, like, blow up all of these rocks and ice, then that is how we will defeat Godzilla. We will entomb him in rocks and ice on this deserted island. And it's just, it is just such a strange, there's, like, no character arc for this guy other than to, like, just to sort of show off how heroic and smart the hero is.
Mm-hmm.
And also, like, how much Riz the Tsukioka must have if his best friend is also in love with his fiance. But, like, Tsukioka's the one that pulled her. You know, it was just, like, so... Again, the contrast of this movie against how good the original Godzilla was and how, like, human and complex all of these characters felt with very minimal work.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the mess of whatever the hell Kobayashi is doing in this movie of just kind of, like, not really having a super good purpose. And again, his death just gave the other guy an idea of how to kill Godzilla. Like, you know... it was just, you know, it's hard. Sorry, this is not very articulate because I feel about as articulate as this movie does about with its characters, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you can feel the conflict in the writer's room of, you know, of just like, okay, we don't have an oxygen destroyer this time. What do we do? And you can kind of feel that they probably spent, like, a good amount of time just thinking, like, well, shit. Tanks didn't work, giant electricity didn't work, nothing else worked, and then someone's just like, well, what if we just bury him?
Yep.
what if we just bury him in stone and ice? Maybe that'll work. That'll put away Godzilla for good.
Now here's the thing. Godzilla comes from the bottom of the ocean. Kevin, do you know how much the ocean weighs?
Yeah.
Remember was it last year now? Almost? When did the Titan submersible incident happen?
Oh boy.
Time is a soup. And so you guys know where that joke is going. I'm not gonna finish that punchline.
Well, and they make a bigger thing of that in Godzilla -1 as well. Like, their plan in Godzilla -1, because they also didn't have an oxygen destroyer. So they're just like, okay, you know, Godzilla -1, let's bring him all the way down to the depths of the ocean and then bring him all the way back up and see if we can get him with the bends or whatever.
Yeah, they got him with the bends, and then, I mean, spoilers for Godzilla -1, everyone. They got him with the bends, and then a combination of, they did the Nemean lion trick on him, where they're like, his insides are probably gooey and soft, so we'll just kind of get him from the inside out.
Mm-hmm. There's a few ways to skin a Godzilla.
Yeah, there's not a ton, but there is a few that'll work, and we will explore all of them that they have ever thought of in these movies, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it is, like, again... everybody that was online during the Titan submersible incident got a very in-depth education on exactly how much PSI is going on a mile deep into the ocean. Godzilla could take a bunch of weight, presumably, but yeah, burying it in ice and rock is gonna be the way to do it.
It's also weird.
It's
weird that he kills Anguirus like halfway through the movie, and then we still have another half of the movie to go. And like that's the half where they put a lot of like the character stuff, and it just feels so weird when they're like having a company dinner and talking about like his Mr. Groom nickname and oh haha, there's a girl that I like and all this different stuff. And it's like there's still a Godzilla out there, guys.
It sort of makes you, it was like, well, what was the point of Anguirus to begin with?
Right?
Except they were like, you know what's better than one giant movie monster? 2 giant movie monsters.
Whoa.
Like, it feels like they had to do something for the sequel. Like, this was we're raising the stakes, because that's the problem with sequels, is that you have to raise the stakes from the previous film. And when the previous film has stakes as high as the original Godzilla movie, it is, you're already in the stratosphere. Where else do you have to go except to the moon?
Which will go to space in later movies, by the way.
Oh, I know that. So
wait till you see Space Godzilla, which is also a different Godzilla.
Oh, Jesus. Oh, God. The Godzilla is the species.
Yes, that's what Godzilla Raids Again tells us, that the Godzilla is a species.
Yeah, Godzilla is a species. But yeah, they just came up with a big monster for him to fight, and then he kills it halfway through. Like, it's not like the solution is let them fight, the solution is Godzilla's gonna fight this other big monster to establish exactly how threatening Godzilla is, which we already know he is, and then the humans still have to figure out how to... I mean, I guess what's the alternative? What's the alternative? That the Ankylosaurus dude kills Godzilla, and then the humans have to figure out how to kill the Ankylosaurus? It's fucking Godzilla's movie. His name's in the title. He ain't gonna die by an Ankylosaurus, bitch. Like, it's just, yeah, it really... The whole movie just feels so slapdash and contradictory and weird and discombobulated. But it's not like so, for me at least, it's not that it was so bad it turns around into being good. I was just kind of like, oh, this is bad the entire time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a retreading of the original movie, but worse and less of the tone, and the structure doesn't work. And how they defeat Godzilla is all right. And, one of the main characters does a heroic sacrifice that does not feel like a heroic sacrifice. There's just a lot of ways that this movie just does not work. But it sets this trajectory for what the later Showa era Godzilla movies are going to be like, with like we're going to have two giant monsters fighting. We're going to get a little bit more comedic, where like Godzilla's role is slowly going to morph as we go on. But it is definitely interesting watching this movie, knowing where Godzilla is going to go afterward.
Yeah, it's like, this movie is like, go girl, give us nothing except the premise of more than half of the Godzilla films that follow.
Yeah.
Like, it is so weird. You're right. It is so weird, like, looking at this movie in the context of 50 years of Godzilla, more than 50 years of Godzilla movies, of like, oh, this is where that started.
Yeah, this movie was the ramp to make more Godzilla films. It's like, oh, we can make as many Godzilla films as we want now, as long as the plot is he fights another monster.
This was the ramp to jump the giant shark.
Yeah. So real quick, two fun facts that I have to say. First off,
okay.
Angurus's roar is a saxophone being played very badly.
Okay, that's fun. I like that.
Yeah, we talked about how Godzilla's roar is like a bass being played with like an oily glove.
It's so
roar,
good.
Yeah, Angurus's roar is like a saxophone. Also, the reason I brought up, God, what was his name? Tsukioka's friend Tajima. So Tajima just shows up halfway through the movie, and he helps Tsukioka in like the final bombing run on Godzilla. But otherwise, he's not that much of a character. I completely forgot about him actually after my first viewing. That said, while I was doing research for this movie, I found out that the actor behind Tajima, Yoshio Tsuchiya, he played a farmer named Rikichi in Seven Samurai.
Oh my god.
Yes. During the filming of Seven Samurai, the original Godzilla was also being filmed. And Tsuchiya kept going over to the Godzilla set, and he really wanted to be in Godzilla. But he was too busy being in this podunk little movie called Seven Samurai. God. So
that is
when he learned they were making go for it.
Oh my god. And then he's like, I gotta be in a Godzilla movie. And it's one that, if you went to anybody on the street and you're like, Godzilla, and they're like, yeah, of course, duh. And then you're like, have you seen the movie Godzilla Raids Again? They'd be like, I had no idea that was a movie. Meanwhile, you go on the street and you're like, are you familiar with Seven Samurai? I will say this. The average American may or may not be familiar with Seven Samurai. But if you said,
it's a pinnacle of cinema.
What's the cowboy movie? Fuck, what's it
cowboy
called?
version. Bug's Life. No, that was the bug version.
No. Oh my god. The Bug's Life is not based off of Seven Samurai.
It is. 100%.
It is not.
The Magnificent Seven, that's the one you're talking about.
Magnificent Seven, yeah. They would be like, yes. Also, Magnificent Seven is... The Magnificent Seven and Seven Samurai, like, relationship is the opposite of the Godzilla. American, Japanese Godzillas. Because the Magnificent Seven's good.
Yeah. See, that's
and Seven
what...
Samurai is...
That's what Godzilla, King of the Monsters needed. Godzilla needed a cowboy hat.
This man is in Seven Samurai, which is one of the... I mean, it's in the... Along with the original Godzilla, it's in the Criterion Collection. It's one of the most... I will say, it's probably one of the most influential films in Japanese cinematic history up to the world stage.
Mm-hmm.
And this man was dying to be in Godzilla 2.
Yeah.
The worst Godzilla.
Well, he wanted to be in the original Godzilla because it was filming around the same time as Seven Samurai. And so afterward, like when he was done with Seven Samurai, he went up to Toho and heard that they were immediately making another Godzilla movie. So he was like, hey, I really, really want to be in this Godzilla movie. So they created this airman character for him to just show up halfway through the movie. And this, by the way, is not the last time we will see Yoshio Tsuchiya. He will show up in different roles in later Godzilla movies. But I
love that for him.
Can you absolutely imagine being in Seven Samurai and being like, man, I wish I was in Godzilla right now?
I mean, listen, the original Godzilla is still a good movie.
Yeah.
But it does feel a little bit like, it's, oh God, I can't even think of like an equivalent modern example. I mean, it would be like saying like, oh, I couldn't be in Star Wars. If Harrison Ford couldn't do Indiana Jones because he was in Star Wars, yeah. That's kind of the thing, that would be maybe one of the closest equivalents I could think of. I'm sure there are, in the comments, tell me the examples I'm blanking on right now of people being in a really giant movie, but they wanted to be in another similarly giant movie that had been filming at the same time and they couldn't have been in both. Because usually I feel like the most famous examples are usually, I was in a movie I thought was going to be really big, so I turned down a role, and the movie I was in nobody remembers, but the role I turned down is like iconic now. Like it's usually that, or vice versa, of like, I was in this really big movie and I did or didn't know about it, but I really did want to do this other movie and I couldn't do it. And everybody's like, well, thank God you didn't do that movie because nobody's fucking heard of that movie and everybody knows the movie that you did end up doing. Like, it's always like a big movie to a small movie. It's never like Seven Samurai to Godzilla. But oh my God, that is wild.
Right?
That is an interesting cinematic fun fact.
Yeah, right. So, anything else you want to talk about?
No, I think that's about it. This movie left a lot to be desired, but also set the stage in ways that are formative, I guess. Godzilla Raids Again changed the landscape of cinema despite being a mediocre movie. And for that, I will, respect.
Mm-hmm.
I get it. They were under a time constraint. They were studio demands. Like, I get it. They probably tried their best, but I will probably be way more forgiving to subsequent Godzilla movies than I am to this one, which is following immediately on the heels of the original Godzilla. Like, that is a tough act to follow for it. And down the line, I'm going to be given like a 4-star review to some absolute slapdick movie. And people are going to be like, but you gave Godzilla Raids Again 1.5 stars. Like, well, I disliked it more than I liked that.
So is that your rating, 1.5 stars?
Yeah, I guess so. Like, I really didn't. I kept zoning out during this movie because it was hard to follow, honestly. Well, it was maybe not hard to follow in the sense of it was difficult to understand, but like it was just so structurally weird, and there was characters that I didn't understand what they were here for, and it was just kind of a mess. So It was hard to follow because it did not feel like a coherent, complete, succinct movie.
Yeah, I would give this movie 2 stars out of 5. And I think I'm not giving it 1 star because it wasn't bad enough to make me angry. It was just like, okay, this is the same movie, but worse. and it's trying something new and it fails. I did really, really like the shot of like when Godzilla's first attacking Osaka and like the flares go out into the night sky and Godzilla's looking up at all the flares. Like that was really cool.
There was some really cool shots. Yeah. And the flare trick, we're gonna black out the city and use flares to distract Godzilla. That was like an interesting strategic move. Obviously, it didn't work. We didn't even talk about the prison break.
What is there to talk about?
It came out of nowhere. It just was like, it was so contrived and silly. Like, why were they doing this? When did they start this prison transport? Before or after the alarms went off? Like, it had nothing to do with anything except we needed...
I think it was part of evacuating the city.
Also, why weren't the prisoners handcuffed?
Yeah, it was pretty easy for them to break out.
Is it the same reason that Godzilla didn't use his atomic breath until halfway through the movie after he had already killed his main opponent? Like, is that why the prisoners didn't have handcuffs? Because plot? Because I fucking hate that. I hate it. Here's the thing. You get one coincidence / because plot in a movie. You get one incident where I'm like, I will buy this because it makes the rest of the movie possible and the rest of the movie is good enough to allow this. In The Martian, which is one of my favorite movies ever, this is because plot, is the storm that makes them leave Mars. The whole storm, the storm that sets up the entire movie that causes them to evacuate and strands Mark on Mars. Mars does not have a strong enough atmosphere for that kind of storm. It is it is impossible for a storm like that to work on Mars with its current atmosphere. And we know that they have not been terraforming Mars to have like a more intense atmosphere. You can't, it does not have, there are dust storms on Mars, but none as violent as that. However, the rest of the movie / book is so good and the science in it is so correct and interesting and good that I will allow the impossible storm in order to allow the rest of the movie. That is the gimme that it gets. Andy Weir, you can have that one for free because I love your work. And the rest of the movie is so good. Like, so yeah, you get one suspension of belief. This is not technically correct, but like, go with me, you know? And in science fiction, it is often like, we have a way to like do faster than light travel and have gravity on spaceships, just go with it. And we're like, yeah, sure, okay. Like that whole thing is often the gimme. In Jurassic Park, the gimme is the technology to there's Jurassic Park, I guess technically the gimme is like that it's technologically feasible or whatever to clone dinosaurs in the 1990s, but like in the same sense of the gimme in Iron Man is like that they can make an Iron Man suit, you know, it's just like it's science fiction, so sure. I mean, it's theoretically possible. It will probably get to a point where we could do that, you know? And they explain everything like I'm like, I buy all of this. Yeah, sure. They get the genome, an almost complete genome sequence from the amber, like, mosquito thing, sure. And then they, like, clone the dinosaurs and it's all chill and good. The feather thing with the dinosaurs, at that point, I think we did know, scientists at least did know that dinosaurs had feathers, or they were that theory was like gaining ground, but they didn't do it because they're like, we need these dinosaurs to look scary, and the popular imagination of dinosaurs at that time is that no feathers. But then the consequence of the Jurassic Park movies being so insanely popular is that people still are like, what do you mean dinosaurs have feathers? Because they don't in Jurassic Park. And then 2, the velociraptors are bigger than velociraptors are supposed to be. They're like
chicken size.
2 or 3 times the size of actual. Yeah, velociraptors are like the size of small dogs. Well, not small dogs, but dogs.
Yeah.
And then in the movie in Jurassic Park, they're like like 5 feet, 6 feet tall or whatever because they need to be super threatening. But also during the course of making Jurassic Park, they found raptors, not velociraptors technically. I think they're Utah raptors. I could be wrong. I'm not like double checking my work here, guys. That are around the size of the raptors in Jurassic Park. So, you know, and also, like, these are not things that the general public... Anyway,
I think it really says something about how much interest, like, you held for Godzilla Raids Again, or rather, how much interest Godzilla Raids Again, like, garnered from you, that you went into a rant about, like, The Martian and Jurassic Park so you could talk about, like, good movies.
Better sci-fi? Yeah.
All right. Do you want to lead us out?
Yeah, I will lead us out. Okay, let's see. Oh, it's not a different color. I was so confused. Normally, this is a little behind the scenes bit for you guys. Normally, the intros and outros are different colored texts, and then it wasn't. It was all black this time, so I was confused for a moment. Okay. Next, we'll be watching Godzilla vs. King Kong, the 1962 version. You can't find it on streaming for some reason, but it is available on the Internet Archive and YouTube from people posting it. If you liked this podcast, be sure to subscribe, give us a rating, leave a comment, and share with a friend. Follow us on social media. We got the links in the show notes. We also have a Ko-fi. You can support us there and get access to cool bonus content like extra episodes, early access to episodes, and access to the private Discord, where you can talk with other geeks about Godzilla and all things Digital Kaiju. Check it out! Gorilla Whale is a production of Digital Kaiju Studios. It is hosted and produced by Kevin Carpenter. That was a weird ad.
No, keep that in.
Gorilla Whale is a production of...
Take 3.
Gorilla Whale is a
Take 4.
Gorilla Whale... Oh my god, stop talking. Gorilla Whale is a production... Gorilla Whale is a production of Digital Kaiju Studios. It is hosted and produced by Kevin Carpenter and Kayla Knutson. Gorilla Whale has no official affiliation with Toho, Legendary, or any other companies associated with the Godzilla franchise. We thank you for watching along with us. Until next time, watch out for kaiju.
Watch out for kaiju.